Yeah, dober dan. That means good day. This is TalkCast PDX. You can find us on the web, talkcastpdx.com. It is Tuesday, January 25th, 2022. Name of the show is The Bogdanich Perspective. I'm your host, Paul Bogdanich, and welcome. It's episode number 45 today. We're going to call it Geography. Hopefully that'll become clear why I called it that later, but call it Geography. Start out with my usual disclaimer here. I'm part of the TalkCast PDX network. They had a lot of lifestyle shows, cooking shows, informational shows, this shows, that shows, and I broadcast on their YouTube channel, and I'm the only show that has ever fallen afoul of the content guidelines. And I get all them taken down for a week, so I have to be very careful what I say on here, and that's going to continue through this week. We're gonna do something a little different this week. Market action's been unusual, so we're going to look at the markets, go into the little talk about current events on why, and then go back to the markets. So if you could please put up graph number 1, Justin. Just last week, for the week ended, what would that be? The 21st. For the week ended Friday, the 21st of November, the markets fell 265 points, which is about 5.68%. The graph that's on your screen is yesterday. Okay, so by Friday of last week, the markets fell for the week, and it was a short week. It only had 4 days because of the Martin Luther King holiday on Monday. So you had Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and over the 4 days, it fell almost 6%, 5.68. What was it? Yeah, 5.68%. And when it opened yesterday, this is the chart from yesterday, by 12:15 in the afternoon, East Coast time, so that's 9 Pacific, it had fallen another 4%. All right, so it opened up the day on Monday, and it dropped another 4% intraday on Monday. And by the end of the day, they had brought it back, and it closed up, I think, like 12 points, which is about 0.03%. So market weakness, you can take that graph off. A lot of your more cynical pundits were calling it a miraculous market melt-up or a miraculous market recovery. That's the Fed, action. By the time it dropped the 4% intraday on Monday, it was down almost 12% from its high that it set on January 3rd. So whatever it was, 5.68% the week following, 4% intraday drop yesterday morning. So you're already at 10.68% plus, I think, another 1.5% from the week prior. And very volatile. As to what's causing the volatility, I would point out that if you have an opinion that runs contrary, you have an opinion on something that might be affecting the market or society generally, or some of these other issues, if it runs afoul of the content guidelines, you're prohibited from discussing that opinion on your major platforms. And what you're reduced to is the narrative in the mainstream press. And I looked at that yesterday, and it's some of the stuff is interesting. Beginning of last week, I think it was the 15th, so I don't remember, anyway, last week is when I saw it. I'm not positive when it went into effect. I know there's huge demonstrations about it, but the Biden administration passed a regulation where if you're a trucker to cross an international border, so from U.S. to Mexico, or from Mexico to the U.S., or from the U.S. to Canada, or from Canada to the U.S., you have to comply with certain medical. requirements. A bunch of the truckers don't want to comply with certain medical requirements. They did a convoy yesterday in Ontario, Canada, filled the roads for 100 kilometers. Solid trucks and cars blocking both lanes of the main highway into Toronto. Truckers have unions and associations and all. But anyway, the long and the short of it is it's going to cause further disruption to the supply chain. It's wintertime in the Northern Hemisphere. It's January. And we get all our winter vegetables from Central and South America, right? Mexico and Argentina and places. And a good number of those products, particularly the ones grown in Mexico, come up on refrigerated trucks into the United States. And one would think that if you have fewer trucks crossing the border for whatever reason, that you're going to see fewer fresh fruits and vegetables in the supermarket, or other products that come from Mexico. But when you look at that in the headline in the approved press, and this is the Wall Street Journal, this is the headline: worker illnesses strain U.S. food supplies. Is the headline. They do the same thing with these medical requirements through a variety, even though the Supreme Court ruled, still some private employers are going ahead with it, consulting firms, accounting firms, this, that, and the other thing. And that's also in and it causes staff shortages, so not as much work gets done. And that in the Wall Street Journal is characterized as, quote, virus wave fuels worker absences. And then, of course, the Supreme Court upheld the mandates for the healthcare workers, and that causes staffing disruptions. And that, in the Wall Street Journal, is referred to hospitals strained to the limit. When you get rid of your staff, that's probably true. A combination of staff and increased caseload. Very interesting. Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin held what did he call it? COVID-19, a second opinion, a big roundtable discussion yesterday. I don't think you can find it on YouTube, but you can find it on Rumble or BitChute or somewhere. But that's interesting to go and look at if you want to do that. There was a historian, and then the other thing that I think is affecting the market, okay? Can't be sure, right? Because I only know what I read in the papers, yeah? But is this situation in Eastern Europe, Ukraine. Military historian, guy by the name of Gwen Dyer, Canadian, a rather famous military historian. I don't think people know his work anymore, but it was all very, very good. Once said that foreign wars are God's way of teaching Americans geography. In other words, we wouldn't know where this country or that country is unless, we fought a foreign war there. That's about right. In Ukraine, to understand the situation, you have to go through a little bit of the geography and the history. And so I'm going to do that really quickly. If you could put up graph number 2. All right, this is just a big plot, and this is where Ukraine is. All right, you can see it on the screen there. Ukraine's in green, all right, and it says UKR, it says Ukraine on it, but that's in green. And please notice that it's right on the Russian border, and the country next to it is Belarus, and then to the west it's got a border with Poland, and then to the south Romania, and then it runs into the Black Sea. The Crimea portion, which is that peninsula at the bottom, this map is old. It's no longer part of Ukraine. It was only put in Ukraine in 1957 because the leader of Russia, or the Soviet Union at that time, Leonid Brezhnev, happened to come from Ukraine. So he did it as kind of like a holiday gesture. Russians took it back in 2014. So that little peninsula at the bottom is part of Russia, and that's where Ukraine is. It's right on the Russian border, right? If you could please put up graph number 3. This is Napoleon's invasion route. Now, when you try and think like a Russian, it's very important to remember that the Russians have been invaded from the West 3 times in the last 210 years. Okay, this was a major invasion of 1812. Right, this is Napoleon. And if you look on the extreme left-hand side of the graph around Warsaw and then up again to the north, that's where Napoleon staged for the winter of 1811, 1812. That's where he brought in 1,250,000 men and about 1,500 cannon. The largest modern army by far that the world had ever seen. And that's where he wintered, in those little round areas. And then as it started to get to spring, he moved them up into the gray areas. And then where the blue line starts is the assault. And you'll notice that the assault was rather broad. And then where it goes into the single line charging towards Moscow, that's a town called Smolensk. Okay. And just remember the name, Smolensk. It's the main route, to Moscow. If you could take down number 3 and put up number 4, and that was in 1811. In 1941, put up graph number 4. In 1941, and then we're going to go to graph number 5 very quickly, but number 4 here. This was the basic German plan for the invasion that actually kicked off on June 22nd, 1941. And you can see it had Army Group North, Army Group Center, and Army Group South. And Army Group Center was to go into 2 pincers and surround Russian troops in the area of Minsk and Bialystok and so on, and converge on, again, Smolensk. All right. And there's a reason for that, which we'll discuss in a minute. And then the Southern Army was to drive towards Rostov, and the Northern Group was to drive towards Leningrad, which we now call St. Petersburg. If you could take that one down and put up number 5, and that was the German plan. All right, that's that's the basics of the plan. Graph number 5 here is what actually happened. All right, this is the historical retrospective of the way the Germans went in. Army groups North, South, and Center. Army Group South split into 2 pincers to surround those little dotted circles were Russian military forces. Army Group Center surrounded the 3 military forces. Actually 5, and then they surrounded the one around Kiev, Kiev, which is down there in the center of the capital of Ukraine, and so on. And the black line that's at the edge that runs from Leningrad down to whatever you call that, along the Dnieper River to the south, is where the Germans wintered in 1941, 1942. And what's important about this is that all the invaders in Russian history always stage in Poland, and to get into Russian territory, they have to cross the modern nations of Ukraine and Belarus. And if you look at the ground in between the Polish, really where it says Pipit Marshes on that map there, from there, and the line that goes through Kiev all the way down to Odessa is a thing called the Dnieper River. It's huge, Dnieper, Dnieper River. It's bigger than the Mississippi, as big as the Columbia. It's just enormous, very hard to cross, natural barrier, one of the few. But you can see in the south that as far as the Germans advanced in the first year was on the banks of the Dnieper River down in what they call the Donetsk or Donbass region of Russia. But basically, all foreign invasions, you can take that one down. All foreign invasions from the West stage in Poland, and then they advance across the modern nations of Ukraine and Belarus. And they have a real hard time advancing across the modern nations of Ukraine and Belarus, because for 7 months, for 6 months out of the year, 3 months out of the year, it's frozen in a Russian winter. All right, so you can cross it during the winter. Another 6 months out of the year, if you try and do open field maneuver, if you can put up graph number 6, if you try and do what's called open field maneuver, go off-road to advance to the west, what you run into is this. All right, graph number 6 here. And that's, the mud is 10 feet deep. Ukraine's a swamp, basically. If you could take that one down, please. In the modern, and that's the Russian history. They've been invaded 3 times in the last 210 years from the West. Each time the invaders staged in Poland. Each time they stopped them in the muds of Ukraine and Belarus before they could advance on Moscow. Napoleon actually made it to Moscow, but the Russians had burned the city to the ground and evacuated, forcing him to evacuate. The Germans got within major forces got within 75 miles of Moscow, but stalled for the winter. And then they were subject to a winter counteroffensive by the Russians, so they never made it to Moscow. But the basic point is, if you attack from Poland, they have a chance. If you can put up graph number 7, this is just the this is what Ukraine is. This is just the ethnic border of Ukraine. You'll notice in the parts that are currently, the current war in Ukraine, or occupied parts, those are down in what they call the Donbass and Rostov regions, which are those 2 areas in the south that are closest to Russia. On the ethnocentric map here, they're Russian-speaking. Crimea, the island, or the peninsula down there in the bottom, is solidly, it's Russian, always has been for this last several thousands of years. The population is fully Russian. And Ukraine, the part of it that's friendly to the West, is that dark red part, okay, Western Ukraine. And you can see the Dnieper River, all right, that little circle there in the middle of the red part, where it's kind of the lighter red, that's Kiev, Kyev, which is the capital of Ukraine. And please notice the border to Belarus in the north is, right on the Dnieper River. And as I say, Dnieper River is huge. You can take that one down. And if you go back to, anyway, the Russians, because of their history and because of this, the Western idea is that Ukraine is going to be an independent, heavily militarized state, friendly to the West. If you could go back to graph number 2 real briefly here. And with Ukraine as an independent nation, friendly to Western governments, with a strong military that we provide, again, where it says Ukraine and then the city of Kiev and that little blue line, that's the Dnieper River. The thought on our strategic planners and so on is to have them build facilities along the banks of the Dnieper from west to south. And if you listen to us tell it, in case of instability, we could reinforce that line because the facilities would all be there, and all we would need to do is move in the tanks and the troops and everything else. But your full facilities would be there, and you could reinforce the line within, call it, 3 months instead of 2 years. And the Russians say no. Please see where Belarus is up there, and where Kiev is, and then the Dnieper River as it goes up into Belarus. You can, I'll leave it up for this second. But all right, so why am I talking about this now? This has been going on for a long time. Couple of reasons, but the one that why I'm talking about it now is I looked at a detailed map of forces, and up there out of Ukraine, but just on the border of Belarus to the left side of Kiev, so you don't have to cross any rivers to get to it. The Russians moved in a full division of air defense assets, S-400 Triumphs, and you can take that down. What's unusual about that is that the northern border of Ukraine, or the southern border of Belarus, directly north and a little bit to the west of Kiev, is part of the Chernobyl radiologic zone. Okay. All right. Chernobyl was the large nuclear reactor that melted down in the late 80s, and they moved a full division of air defense assets into the area. A division is 3 regiments. If it's a reinforced division, it can be as many as 6. Each regiment has in between 3 and 5 launchers. Each launcher has 6 missiles. S-400 air defense. being in the radiologic zone, these things travel fairly light. You can build wooden transit ways for the troops to stay on and stay off the ground so you don't stir up too much radiation, but they can't stay there for years. All right, months, not years. All right, they're in the radiologic zone of the Chernobyl reactor. If you listen to the security analysts that understand Russia, what they say is that with all the sanctions under Obama, and then the Russians tried to interfere with our elections in the 2016, the Russiagate horseshit, excuse my language, and all the sanctions that were put on there. And, Biden showing how he's going to bring Putin to heel, and the additional sanctions, expelling of diplomats that he's done in the last year, and then the threats for sanctions going forward. The Russians don't feel that they have anything. There's no diplomatic cost to them. All right, given what we've already done, the diplomatic cost is de minimis. They've sent delegations. They have 3 different peace proposals. Each peace proposal, or security proposal as they call them, says Ukraine will not be a militarized state. Period. We will not allow you to mass forces on the Dnieper River. Not going to do it. All right, no. All right, and they've stopped talking. Okay, and they go to all the diplomatic meetings, and they and they talk about their security proposals and what they want. And just in today's paper, what did it say? U.S. says it will refuse all security concessions proposed by Russia, because Ukraine's an independent nation and we can put in everything we want. And speaking of putting in everything we want, the British, another headline. In today's paper, these are the headlines about Ukraine. The first page above the fold, as I recall. On the brink of war, Ukrainians are resigned. First page above the floor, these are all the Wall Street Journal. On page A4, why Putin is emboldened to act. Page A8, UK leads European nations in support of Kiev. Right, Kiev is the capital of Ukraine, and that's true. They've been flying in heavy military equipment, which is just exactly what the Russians don't want. They went to fly it across Europe, and the Germans told them, no, you can't cross German airspace flying weapons into Ukraine, so they went around to the north, but the Brits are aggravating the situation tremendously. Page A12, Putin's threat to Ukraine isn't limited to invasion. And then in the editorial section, by the editorials of the Wall Street Journal, it's deterrence message to Moscow. All right, so what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different articles in today's Wall Street Journal, all of which saying that Ukraine's an independent nation, they can be militarized if they want, and blah, blah, blah. And the Russians said no, put forward peace proposals, and have stopped talking. Okay? They're not talking. They'll go to these negotiations. They're creating a diplomatic record. We went here, we explained the problem to you, we offered our solution. We went here, we explained the problem to you, we offered our solution. We went here, we explained the problem to you, we offered our solution. And there are no other discussions, no press releases, no this, no that. There's one meeting left, one that counts, OSCE. And the OSCE stands, what does OSCE stand for? Organization of something, Security of Europe. I can't remember. Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. It's not dominated by America, like the NATO and all the other talks that they've been to. So this one is dominated by the European countries, and that happens later this week or next week. I can't remember. And they've moved air defense assets into a radiologic zone. Once the air defense assets are in place, you can throw mechanized divisions in there, but they would likely just transit through because mechanized divisions disturb the soil. And, whatever it's been, 35, 40 years since the reactor meltdown, what's happened is the radioactive material is overgrown by about 6 inches of soil. If you let it sit for 10,000 years, it turns into a layer of rock, and it just goes away. But if you send a mechanized division through there or a mechanized core, it causes problems, especially for the troops that do it. And the Russians put a full air defense division in the radiologic zone, and they've stopped talking. What worries, and again, if you're worried about this, you can't say anything. All right, you can't get your opinion published. Maybe you can, I don't know, but I mean, you'll never read it in the headlines. All right, it's not going to affect the mood. And what worries me, all right, is I think that our leaders, again, they've been relieved of the responsibility to have an economy to pay all these bills. They print the money, okay, and then by printing the money, they corrupt everybody. They just pay them off because they just print the money. They don't have to get the money from anywhere. They don't have to raise taxes. They just print it. And you have the same politicians in charge for the last 30 years, and they've been doing this. And I think the mindset up there is, this is just all minor problems. The Russians are just jockeying for position and doing this and that. And meanwhile, the Russians keep putting forward the same proposal and have stopped talking. And this in retrospect, this is kind of the way World War I started. And when you read the history of World War I today, which is 100 years later, they use the word miscalculation or misinterpretation. Right? The British misinterpreted or miscalculated the intentions, the combined intentions of the Germans and the Russians, and started World War I. Hitler, there was no miscalculation at all. He wanted to invade Russia. But anyway, the Russians won't accept a militarized Ukraine. In my opinion, American leaders think it's all a giant negotiation. And I see tremendous opportunity for a miscalculation, if you will. They've moved troops into the radiologic zone north of Kiev. All right. If they decide to reinforce that with a mechanized division, Kiev falls within 96 hours. Not take 2 weeks. Can't get any reinforcements in there. Ukraine would fall within less than 4 days, probably less than 2. All right, and those troops are sitting in a radiologic zone. We think that we can stop them with our Air Force, and this is, again, old leaders. Back in 1990s, our invisible planes, they were invisible. All right, it's 30 years later. All right, the Russians assure us that our invisible planes are not invisible. And we don't believe them. So it'll be interesting to. Anyway, huge risk. I think it's making people nervous. If I open up, we're going to go back to the markets now. If I open up the markets, as of right now, they're down another 2%. Again, in the morning, but they're down 2% today. If you can put up whatever it is, graph number 8 here, just to display what the markets are looking like. And this is a graph from September 30th to January 24th, which was yesterday. And we already saw the intraday graph for January 24th, where the markets fell 4% in the morning and then recovered in the afternoon. But this is what the closing graph looks like. And you can see that on 21st, which was Friday, steep drop in the markets, and then they recovered up a little bit. That's January 21st. See the red dot at the bottom? All right. That's where the markets were midday, 12:30 p.m. East Coast time, Eastern time, so 9:30 p.m. Pacific, which is mid-trading day in New York. All right, the markets had fallen that far to that red dot. That was the intraday low, 42.23. Today, they're halfway down. They only fell 2% today instead of 4% to the red dot. And anyway, that's where we are now. Again, when the Fed supports the markets, they do it at the end of the day on increased volume and so on. and our politicians, they think they control everything. Nothing to worry about. You can take that graph down. Nothing to worry. We have it all under control. If the market's down, I just make a call. Plunge protection team, which is the street euphemism for the division of the New York Fed that's in charge of market stability, buys it back, and they don't think anybody's serious. They think everybody's there to negotiate and play political games and see how much money they can get and so on. They don't think anybody's serious at all, because they're not. And, Putin, despite Western stories to the contrary, is just a politician, and his military and his rich people and his population have been invaded 3 times in the last 200 years from the West. Of the 40 million people that died during the Second World War, 30 million died on the Eastern Front. All right. And irrespective of what he wants to do, the political pressure in his system is such that Ukraine cannot be an armed Western-friendly state. Can't, period. End of sentence, just can't. And I think that I doubt whether the president and his staff understand that. Maybe they do, but and maybe they just want to goad him into destroying Ukraine anyway. He's not going to occupy it. Nobody wants Ukraine. All right. If he's really mean, he'll cause 7 million refugees to flood into Europe. Is what he'll do. Blow up their dams, blow up their power plants, blow up their industry, and cause a huge refugee wave into Europe and blow up the dams on the Dnieper River and return the place to a swamp. All right. Like it is historically, is what he may do. And I don't think that we take that seriously. Let's go back to the markets. I've already, what am I, like 30 minutes or something? Yeah. Anyway, but they fell 5% last week. My portfolios all got called away. I'm all in cash. If you look at, I put it down here somewhere. It's 15.12% in between April of 2021 and when all my stock got called away yesterday. Started with 100,000, have like $115,120 or something, all cash. So my portfolio doesn't matter. It didn't go down, didn't go up. They took my stock away on Friday on the options expiration. The top 30 cap weight portfolio, instead of losing 5,681, and this is the largest stocks in the market cap weighted, lost 7,500 instead of only 5,700, call it. The top 30 equal weight lost 6,400 instead of 6,500, so right on it. And then the top 3 every sector lost 4.6% instead of 5.7%. So it outperformed. A little bit of diversification there. Utilities utilities and real estate did not fall significantly compared to the other sectors, nor did consumer staples. If you just go with the top stocks, there are no real estate, utilities, materials, or industrials. So if you go with the top, just the top stocks, which is what the Fed does when they want to buy these things back, or they have historically. Yesterday they did not. They bought broader market portfolios. We'll see if they intervene today and what they do. Like say, as we're sitting here, it's down. Already back at 1.25%. See, down 2% and then close it up. And if you only read the headlines, you'll never see it, right? Because it'll be, back to where it was at the beginning of the day. But it's having trouble. They're having to input money. They have to actively manage it to let it hold where it is. And the thought is they'll keep doing that until the market understands that they're serious. It's kind of like everybody thinks everything's a negotiation and nobody's serious. Right? Russians aren't serious. The Fed isn't serious. If we keep doing this, they'll let it, And it's odd. Anyway, 54 stocks in our 4 largest portfolios Only 3 of them went up. Out of the 54 stocks, and this is the top 35 stocks included, which is more, the top 30 stocks is more than 50% of the capitalization weight of the entire S&P 500 index. Only 3 stocks went up. ExxonMobil went up 0.4%. Procter & Gamble went up 1.8%. And Prologis, which is a real estate concern, went up 1.8%. And that's it for last week. 3 stocks went down, but down less than 1%. So those are very good performing stocks. In there, you had Verizon and Philip Morris. And NextEra Energy, which is a utility, but they're a solar company. Stocks that went down more than 1%, but less than 2%, and there's 9 in there. And again, that's a good showing when the broader markets are down 5%, but they went down in between 1% and 2%. And you had smaller companies, mostly Chevron went down, Johnson & Johnson went down, Abbott Laboratories went down, and Target went down. Notable names in there: 5 companies that went down more than 2 but less than 3, AT&T, UPS, and that's it on the notable names. 9 companies that went down more than 3 but less than 4%, and in there you had Walmart and 3M and Nike and Comcast and Pfizer and Adobe. And then 5 companies that went down 4%, but less than 5. And in there you had Verizon and Costco and Microsoft and MasterCard and ConocoPhillips. And then 3 stocks that went down more than 5%, but less than 6. And that would be Sherwin-Williams, Honeywell, and Berkshire Hathaway. Then you had 5 stocks that went down more than 6%, but less than 7. And that would be Home Depot, Apple, Bank of America, Google, and Intel. And then you had 2 stocks that went down more than 7, and less than 8, Lowe's and Cisco. And then you had 5 stocks that went down more than 8%, but less than 10%. You can see where this is going, huh? JP Morgan, PayPal, Facebook, or Meta Corporation, whatever you want to call it, Boeing Aircraft, and Disney all went down more than 7%, but less than 10. Disney was down 9.6. Boeing Aircraft was down 9.1. Facebook was down 8.7. PayPal down 3.4. 8.4. Excuse me. It's a huge loss for a week, right, in a single stock. But not to be outdone, there were 5 stocks that fell more than 10%. Tesla, Amazon, Nvidia, and Netflix. All right, your large meme stocks, high capitalization. Tesla is like the 3rd or 4th largest company. Amazon, I think, is the 3rd largest company. Tesla fell 10.1%. Broadcom fell 10.6%. Amazon fell 12% exactly. Nvidia fell 13.2%. And this is in a week, mind you. And Netflix fell 24.4%. They had their earnings. Everything was good. But they said subscriber growth, the growth rate in subscribers, not the growth, but the rate of growth in subscribers slowed during the quarter. And they clobbered them for a full 25% in a week. And depending on how much of your portfolio is in that stock, that's huge. All right. So we'll see what happens. As you know, I was recommending back in December to wait, get out of it. And because I thought the market was weak in January, when it opened up, it went down to whatever it was, 2% down today after 4% down yesterday. Fed bought it back, closed up marginally. So if you only monitor the close, that's fine. Today it opened up 2% down, which is half of the 4% yesterday. Right now it's down 1.3%. I expect they'll close it about even or up a little bit. But that's, intervention. Discretionary assets, the pressure is down, so we'll see where this goes. And I'm sure I've gone overtime, 40 minutes, whatever. I've already said what I think is driving the sentiment to cause the market to drop. And this has been the Bogdanich Perspective. Tuesday, always Tuesdays for me. Thank you for joining. Let's see what happens over the remainder of the week here, and join me next week. If you want to send a question, comment, or have me address something, do it by email, paul@stockbetor.com, paul@stockbetor, BETTOR.com. Been Talkcast PDX Network, the Bogdanich Perspective, and do widzenia. And that means goodbye.